What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages? Joker back again once again, and stop the presses if you've heard this one before. I was right. Gasp, shock, horror. Imagine no one's fucking surprised at this point. With Season of the Yawn coming to an end, I wanted to go ahead and take a moment to look back and reflect. Of course, the current floundering season isn't the only thing we'll be talking about. For you see, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages, ahead of what anyone would have imagined would have been scheduled, likely due to bad receptions of the season, a dwindling and disenchanted player base, so much so that the usual suspects that would praise a Bungie wet fart for being top-of-the-line perfume can't even be bothered to swallow and enjoy the last two loads of seminal seasonal shit. Bungie has trotted out resident whipping boy-in-chief, franchise director of Destiny, to give us yet another director's cut, one that I like to call Joker is Always Right Part 2, Electra Boogaloo, The Apology. And if you think I'm being overly indulgent and a tad egotistical, well, you're absolutely right. However, that doesn't change the fact that this 4,000+ word blog post reads like a manifesto transcribed from a drunken marathon of Lukey Boy binge-watching my content for the last 6 months or so. I mean, it's all here. Like how Bungie was ill-prepared to take on seasonal content after the separation with Activision and the loss of the two satellite studios High Moon and Vicarious Visions. Something that, if you recall from the last director's cut, Luke Smith waffled on about, saying that the content upkeep for the season pass model was untenable. But somehow, some way, through some Herculean leap in logic that us mere mortals will never be able to comprehend, Luke Smith decided it would be a spectacular fucking idea to double down on a bad idea. Now, you would think that a glorified blogger who, over the course of nearly 2 decades, worked his way up from glorified blogger to franchise director to one of the most renowned studios on the face of the fucking planet, would have the pattern recognition to know a bad idea when he sees it ... again. But no, he and the powers that be at Bungie decided it would be a great idea to double down, to results that a blind man with glaucoma could see coming a mile away. And while Luke Smith coming out and performing an act of self-flagellation to my greatest hits like, as I covered in length a year ago, the way that we built the annual pass would not work over the long haul. We had a lot of help and person power from our awesome and now former partners. We needed to find a better way forward while preserving the player experience and our business, because we are now self-publishing Destiny. That was a big lift for Bungie in 2019. Or, we aren't delivering the feeling of an evolving world, instead we're delivering the feeling of ephemeral private activities and rewards that go away. The Forsaken Annual Pass had its share of challenges, see last year's director's cut, but it also had this awesome property. If I stopped playing for a season, when I come back, there was a bunch of rewards and activities that I could catch up on. So what could investing more into core activities look like? It could mean more rewards being distributed into these activities, or it could mean taking the theme for a season and using it to galvanize strikes. If we're going to ask players to engage with these activities, we have an opportunity to leverage rewards throughout the season. Imagine the armor sets or sundial weapons being woven into core activity reward pools. Or imagine experiences like pursuing roles for sweet weapons that could only be found in a given playlist as an end-of-the-match reward, like a Crucible Iasaluna. Look, big dog, I feel you on your woof, but I can only be so aroused before I wonder, wait a minute, what's next? And while the validation of Luke Smith parroting my content, for the second time I might add, like I have my hand up his ass and I'm using him as a would-be Muppet, is most certainly cathartic, words are wind, and we've seen Luke Smith blow a lot of smoke up people's asses before. Everything he's saying here is common sense. Like, no shit, you don't say. Bungie was ill-prepared to continue the season pass model after the separation with Activision? You know, like you told us half a year ago? No shit, removing the content that people have paid for from the game doesn't provide the player with value, nor does it imitate a living world. No shit, you should be focusing on stories, strikes, raids, gambit, PvP, because gasp, shock, horror, it's almost like these are the core activities of your fucking game. So while it is quite amusing to see Luke Smith parade it out and say his words and do his little apology dance, it means absolutely nothing if the game doesn't get better. After all, This is the same guy who lamented that all Bungie keeps doing with Destiny is making it wide, not tall. Then apparently concluded the best way to fix this problem was to not address it at all. No, that might, well, actually fix the problem. No, his brain trust of an idea was to keep on keeping on. To do exactly what they'd already been doing, with far less quality and more padding than the push-up bra aisle of a Victoria's Secret. And then, at the end of every season, remove said content. In what I guess is the video game equivalent of bulimia, binging and purging their way from one mediocre DLC to another, to the point that literally the only thing that might actually bring people back, the ace in the hole they've been hiding up their sleeve, is content that they cut from the franchise nigh on 3, almost 4 fucking years ago, in the singular hope that everybody's nostalgia boner will be placated by the return of Trials of Osiris and its spiffy new, recycled, reused, reskin, reintroduced classic weapons and armor from Destiny 1. One must wonder, however, how long will that nostalgia boner stay placated, and not go, you know, full rage boner once people start actually playing Trials again, and after the first week or two when the honeymoon period is over with, and the grim reminder of just how unbalanced Destiny 2's sandbox is, and how many people are willing to cheat and DDoS to get to the lighthouse. You know, issues that have been prevalent in the Destiny franchise for half a fucking decade, with no relief in sight. People like to get all wishy-washy if you dare call a developer lazy. Granted, that does seem to depend on the developer, and how much the person getting all wishy-washy is invested in that developer. People's objections seem to magically disappear when you start talking about, I don't know, Anthem and BioWare, or Bethesda and Fallout 76. But how else would you categorize the level of incompetence and bare minimum effort displayed here by at least the franchise director, and anyone else at Bungie who thought everything after the extremely flawed but high note that was Forsaken was a good idea? At best, it's lazy. At worst, it's malicious. And the only reason that Bungie does it is because they know that they can get away with a bare minimum effort and people will still buy it. Personally, given the choice between laziness and incompetence or malice, I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt. I guess you could say I'm just an eternal optimist. And honestly, I think lazy and incompetent is way more flattering than malice. But hey, if it's malice, well, shit, fuck, I guess I'm just too much of a nice guy. And some of you might be quick to point out, but Joker, you play Destiny! 1, I get paid to play Destiny. And 2, I bought the Shadowkeep Collector's Edition for the really cool lore. It came with the Season Pass, so I regret nothing except the state of the game. Speaking of the state of the game, I said at the beginning that I would give my final thoughts on Season of the Yawn. Season of Yawn had one high note, the return of Saint 14. The missions where we actually got to interact with Saint 14 were a blast, and illustrate really those handful of moments where you can see what the franchise could be. It's stuff like this that really pisses me off, because it demonstrates that on some level, Bungie gets it. Look, I'm just gonna say it here. The Curse of Osiris and the Warmind DLC models weren't the issue from a customer standpoint. The issue was the quality of the content. Does anyone honestly think that anybody cares if you take 5 missions or 6 missions to tell a story and then you recycle half of those missions as strikes? Or you add a few new PvP maps? Or you have your choice of a raid lair, or a dungeon? No, not if the content's good and engaging. No, the issue with Curse of Osiris, and Warmind, and Dark Below, and House of Wolves was that the DLC was just bad. Warmind being the best of them, but overshadowed by a miserable game state, and a story that spent as much time retconning stuff as it was underwhelming. I mean, we lost a bunch of potential Warminds for what? To make Rasputin the only Warmind ever, not just the last Warmind? And then we beat a hive god to death with a stick after killing Crota's brother and Oryx's disowned son like it was an afterthought? I mean, imagine 3 or 4 more Saint 14 missions, all with the quality of the original 2, culminating in a raid lair or dungeon, where we kill the thing that traps Saint 14. Now, I know we do that in a story mission, but this was the thing that trapped Saint 14 and drained him of his light. That's easily raid material. Look, it's not that people take issue with this model, it's that people take issue with the content of the model. The same for the Season Pass. It's that people take issue with the phoned-in quality of the Season Pass content of things like Season of the Dawn, where we're introduced to the 3,586th Horde mode. Was it better than Season of the Undying's Horde mode? Sure, but when you get Horde mode after Horde mode after Horde mode nearly every season in DLC since year 1 of Destiny 2, they all start to bleed together, and my enthusiasm is non-existent. The weapons were just okay, but the incentive to grind for them was invalidated when the Imperium Restoration began, and you literally could stand in the tower for hours at a time, clicking a button. The Imperium Foundation and Corridors of Time represent peak moments of either abusing the community's goodwill on Bungie's part, the community desperately wanting content to play in the hopes that it'll be rewarding, or laziness, as taboo as that is to say. The Corridors of Time puzzle was nothing more than a waste of time, being a puzzle that ultimately only a handful of people could solve while the rest of the community watched on, waiting with bated breath. And the Imperium Restoration was little more than pressing a button for a few hours on end. And in both instances, Bungie was willing to, and did, by their own admission, waste weeks and weeks of players' time for nothing. The Corridors of Time resulted in getting the Bastion quest a little bit early, content that people had already paid for, and the Imperium Restoration led to the reveal of Trials of the Osiris. Both of these events culminating in the only conclusion that you can draw from them, that Luke Smith's "you had to have been there" mentality is superficial at best. The Bastion and Devil's Run exotic quests are nothing to write home about. The Bastion's quest consisting of your bog standard copy-paste, go here, kill things, then go here, kill things, then go do bounties and public events, then run a strike you've already run hundreds of times. But this time with a new enemy. The Devil's Run quest, we go to a place, click a few robots, get a gun, that's it. Though the banter between Saint 14, Osiris, and Shaxx is arguably a high note. Anyways, at the end of the day, Season of the Dawn was more the same but less. All we can do now is hope that Season of the Worthy will be better. The key pieces of content look to be Trials of Osiris and the new Escalation Protocol type event that takes place on several different planets, with a handful of new Lost Sector type activities. Look, I hope it's better. I can't say I'm terribly hyped for anything but Trials, but that comes more from playing PvP with my friends. Maybe even some subscribbles if I get around to it. But hey, like always, those are just my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe. If you haven't, go ahead and hit that bell notification because subscribing doesn't mean anything. Feel free to donate to my Patreon if you are feeling generous, but above all else, stay frosty.